"Why are you still unmarried?" she asked. The rancher looked at the new schoolteacher for a long moment, then gave an answer that made her forget every question she had planned to ask. "Because I was waiting for you." For 32 years, Daniel Carter had been a man who knew how to answer practical questions. He knew the price of cattle, the condition of the fences, the depth of the creek, and exactly how much hay his herd would need before spring. But that question was different. Nobody in the small Montana town of Clearwater had ever asked him so directly why he had never taken a wife. Until Clara Bennett. She had arrived 6 weeks earlier with 2 trunks, a wooden box of books, and enough determination to make the neglected little schoolhouse feel alive again. At 24, Clara was the daughter of a schoolmaster from Ohio, and she had chosen Montana because she wanted a life she had chosen herself. Within days, she had learned every child's name. She noticed which children struggled with reading, which ones came to school hungry, and which ones simply needed someone to believe in them. Daniel first noticed her at Sunday service when she shook his hand and said, "Mr. Carter, I hear your ranch borders the creek." "It does. Would you mind if I took the older children there for a nature lesson?" Daniel nodded. "Use whatever part of the land you need." He expected to forget the conversation. He didn't. A few days later, he saw Clara beside the creek, with 12 children gathered around her. She wasn't simply teaching from a book. She was showing them how to understand the world around them. She asked why the cottonwoods grew near the water, how the slope affected the current, and what would happen when the spring snow melted. The children answered eagerly. Daniel stood near the fence pretending to repair a section that didn't really need repairing. He watched Clara listen to each child as though every answer mattered. That was when something inside him quietly changed. Over the next several weeks, Daniel found more reasons to visit town. Sometimes he delivered firewood to the schoolhouse. Sometimes he repaired a broken gate. Once, he brought a box of apples because he had heard one of the younger children had never tasted an orchard apple. Clara always thanked him, but she never treated his kindness as something she owed him for. One chilly afternoon, Daniel returned a book she had loaned to one of the boys. Clara was sitting on the schoolhouse steps. "Stay a moment," she said. He stayed. They talked about the coming frost, the children, and the first snow. Then Clara tilted her head. "May I ask you something personal?" Daniel immediately sensed trouble. "You may. You've lived here all your life. You have a successful ranch. You're kind to people. So why have you never married?" Daniel removed his hat and stared at the ground. He could have given her the usual answers. The ranch kept him busy. He had never met the right woman. He had simply never found the time. Instead, he looked directly at her. "I was waiting for you." Clara stopped breathing for a second. The wind moved a strand of her red hair across her cheek. She didn't laugh. She didn't look away. She simply smiled softly, as though some part of her had already suspected the answer. Clara carried Daniel's words with her for 3 days. She tried to return to ordinary life, but ordinary life no longer felt quite so ordinary. Every time she saw him outside the schoolhouse, she remembered the certainty in his voice. Then, on a cold Thursday afternoon, a letter arrived from Ohio. Her father was ill. The letter said he wasn't in immediate danger, but his cough had become worse, and her mother was worried. Clara read the letter twice before folding it carefully. She had promised herself that she would build a life in Montana, yet now the thought of her father sitting alone in his study made her heart ache. After the children left, she walked all the way to Daniel's ranch. She had never done that before. Daniel was repairing a saddle when he saw her approaching. He immediately stood. "Clara, what happened?" She handed him the letter. He read her expression before he read the page. She explained everything. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked only one question. "When does the train leave?" "I don't know yet." "Then we'll find out." Clara looked at him. "You don't have to help me arrange everything." "I know," he replied. "I'm helping because you shouldn't have to carry everything alone." His kindness nearly broke the wall she had built around her emotions. She looked toward the road. "Would you come with me?" The words surprised even her. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Tell me when." 2 days later, they boarded the eastbound train together. For Daniel, the journey was uncomfortable, noisy, and far too crowded. But Clara made every mile easier. They talked for hours. She told him about her childhood, her father's school, and the reason she had left Ohio. Daniel told her things he had never told anyone about his mother, his father's death, and the loneliness he had learned to accept as part of ranch life. Somewhere across the plains, Clara asked him why he had said those words on the schoolhouse steps. Daniel looked through the window. "Because they were true," she smiled. "You really don't know how to make things less complicated, do you? I've spent most of my life trying to make things simple. And now?" He looked at her hand, resting beside him. "Now I think simple might not be enough." When they reached Ohio, Clara's mother welcomed them with worried eyes. Her father, Edward Bennett, was weak but awake. He studied Daniel carefully. "You're the rancher from Montana?" "Yes, sir." "And you came all this way with my daughter?" "Yes, sir." Edward looked toward Clara. "Why?" Clara answered before Daniel could. "Because I asked him." Her father smiled faintly. "Then he already understands something important." During the next several days, Daniel helped wherever he could. He chopped wood, carried coal, repaired a loose shutter, and sat with Edward when Clara needed rest. He never acted as though he had come to win approval. He simply helped because someone needed help. Clara's mother noticed. One evening, she quietly told Daniel, "My daughter has been different since she met you." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is," she said. "She sounds like someone who finally stopped searching." When Edward's health began improving, Daniel and Clara prepared to return west. At the station, her father shook Daniel's hand. "Take care of her." Daniel smiled. "She knows how to take care of herself." Edward nodded. "Then make sure she never has to do it alone." On the train home, Clara reached for Daniel's hand. This time, neither of them hesitated. When they returned to Clearwater, everything looked familiar, yet nothing felt the same. Clara went back to the little schoolhouse, and Daniel returned to his ranch, but now there was an invisible thread between them. He visited the school more often. She began, bringing books to his ranch and teaching him things she claimed every educated man should know. He pretended to complain, but he never missed a lesson. One morning, Daniel found Clara kneeling beside a little boy named Samuel who had fallen while carrying a stack of books. The other children were laughing, but Clara wasn't. She helped him stand, brushed the dirt from his coat, and said, "Being embarrassed doesn't mean you failed. It means you tried in front of people." Daniel watched from the doorway. He realized that her kindness wasn't something she performed when people were watching. It was simply who she was. That evening, he left a basket of food at the home of a widowed woman whose children had gone hungry. He didn't tell anyone. Clara found out anyway. "You know," she said, "you don't have to hide every good thing you do." Daniel shrugged. "Good deeds don't need an audience." She smiled. "That's exactly why I noticed." Weeks passed. Winter settled over Montana. Daniel repaired the schoolhouse roof before the first heavy snow. Clara organized warm clothing for the poorest children, and Daniel quietly supplied firewood for every family that needed it. Their relationship grew in the small moments, The shared cups of coffee, the long walks beside the frozen creek, the books left on each other's doorstep, the conversations that lasted until the lantern burned low, but neither rushed the future. Then, one December evening, Daniel asked Clara to meet him outside the schoolhouse. Snow covered the ground, and the town was silent. He stood beside the old wooden steps where he had first told her the truth. "Do you remember what you asked me here?" Clara smiled. "I remember what you answered." Daniel took a small, wooden box from his coat. "I've spent most of my life waiting for the right moment. I don't want to make that mistake again." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. "Clara Bennett, I don't promise an easy life. The ranch will be hard. Winter will be harder. There will be days when everything goes wrong," he paused, "but I promise you will never face those days alone." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, you once asked why I never married," he smiled. "I told you I was waiting for you." He took her hand. "Now I'm asking if you'll stop making me wait." Clara laughed through her tears. "I think I've waited long enough too." She said yes. Months later, the little schoolhouse became the center of a wedding, attended by nearly everyone in Clearwater. The children decorated the doorway with wildflowers saved from summer. Samuel, now proud of his improved handwriting, presented Clara with a letter he had written himself. It contained only 3 sentences. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for teaching me. Please don't ever leave." Clara hugged him tightly. Daniel watched from across the room and smiled. He had once believed a man's life was measured by acres, cattle, and everything he could build with his own hands. Clara had taught him something different. A life was measured by the people who felt safer, stronger, and less alone because you had been there. And when Clara stood beside him beneath the simple wooden arch, Daniel finally understood that waiting had never been wasted time. It had brought him to her, and for both of them, that was worth every lonely year. You're watching Nordic love stories where every journey begins with a heart that refuses to give up on love.